They laughed at the janitor mopping their floors until she walked into the boardroom and fired the CEO. You ever walk past someone like they don't exist? Not out of hate, just assumption. That's how most folks treated Imani. Every night at 9 p.m. sharp, she pushed her mop bucket through the wide glass doors of Everstead Industries, a billion-dollar tech firm headquartered in Tempe, Arizona. The lobby smelled like leather chairs and lemon polish, with sleek marble floors that never had a single footprint by morning. Because of her. Imani wore the standard gray janitor uniform, hair tied up in a simple puff, AirPods in but rarely playing music. She just didn't feel like talking. She wasn't paid to smile. She wasn't paid to be friendly. She was paid to clean. Most people didn't look twice. Some called her sweetheart or girl, even though she wore a name badge. Others talked loudly about million-dollar mergers and Tesla stocks while she wiped tables 2 feet away. A few looked at her with pity, like her life must have gone left somewhere. But Imani didn't blink. She had a rhythm. Vacuum first, trash bins next, then desks, always in that order. And when the execs stayed late, which they often did, they'd laugh and joke like she was invisible. One night, a junior VP named Trevor Blaine spilled his protein shake across the hallway. Didn't apologize, just pointed and said, "You missed a spot." Imani looked at him, quiet, calm, then wiped it up. He laughed like he won something. Trevor didn't know she'd been tracking his stock manipulation moves for 3 months straight, or that she knew exactly what he did with company funds in those team-building retreats in Las Vegas. She didn't say a word. She never did. That same week, 2 new hires in HR took a selfie in the break room and made a joke on Instagram about late-night ghosts when Imani showed up in the background. "Didn't even know we had night staff," one of them commented. "Ghost lady looks mad serious," another replied. Imani saw it. She screenshotted it, saved it to her file. See, what they didn't know, what no one cared enough to find out, was that she had a master's degree in finance from Arizona State University, graduated top 5% in her class. She could have been behind a desk with her name on a plaque, but she chose this. Imani's mother, Celeste Rayner, worked for Everstead for 29 years, never missed a shift. Everybody loved her, until she got sick. Stage 4. They offered no sick pay, no benefits, no support. Just told her she could resign if she needed to. Celeste passed away in that tiny 2-bedroom duplex in Mesa. No funeral coverage, just a folded work vest and a final check for $412.80. So Imani came back, not for revenge, for clarity. She applied under her middle name, used an old address, never mentioned her education, got hired in one interview. Some folks chase power loud. Imani came for it silent. But silence doesn't mean weak. It means watching. And Imani had been watching for a long, long time. Imani's earliest memories weren't of playgrounds or cartoons. They were of her mother, hands raw from bleach, standing over a sink scrubbing uniforms, humming gospel songs under her breath after 10-hour shifts. Celeste Rayner didn't complain. She didn't have time to. Bills were always due, rent was always creeping up, and Imani always needed something for school. But her mother made it work. Somehow. Every morning, Celeste caught the 5:45 bus from Mesa to Tempe. She'd doze off on the ride, lunch in her lap, hair tied back, shoes neatly polished, even though she'd come home covered in grime. She believed in looking presentable, even if the world didn't look back. At night, she'd get home just in time to heat up leftovers and ask Imani about homework. They didn't have much, but what they had came from dignity. Celeste would say, "Clean work is honest work, but don't let it be your only option, baby. Learn money, learn systems, learn who really holds the power." Imani listened. Every word. By the time she turned 16, she was already breaking down budgets better than half the adults in the neighborhood. At 22, she was writing freelance reports on market trends while waiting tables. She could have gone corporate, but something held her back. When Celeste was diagnosed, it was quick. 6 months between her first ER visit and her last breath. Everstead didn't visit. No cards, no check-ins, just a form email that her status had been updated. Imani remembered that email. She remembered staring at it through tears while the hospice nurse unplugged the machines. That was the moment she decided. They wouldn't get away with pretending her mother never existed. She didn't storm into the HR office. She didn't file a complaint. She went quiet, calculated, and started her plan. She saved every dollar, lived cheap, took night gigs, day gigs. At one point, she was working 3 jobs and still reading stock market blogs on her phone during breaks. Every bonus went into Everstead shares. Pennies at first, then dollars, then thousands. She knew how the system worked, who owned what, which board members were just waiting to retire, which ones never showed up to proxy votes. She started making friends in quiet places, janitors, cafeteria staff, the parking garage guy, even a security guard named Luis, who hated the corporate brass as much as she did. "I'm telling you, they don't see us," Luis once said, sipping vending machine coffee with her at 2 a.m. "We could be planning a whole heist and they'd still walk past like we're chairs." Amani smiled, tapping on her phone. "Not a heist," she said. "Something better." But something better needed time, and patience, and no mistakes. There was something about office buildings at night, the way the lights hummed overhead, the way voices echoed just a little too much in empty hallways. You learned things if you stayed quiet long enough. Amani made sure she was always nearby, not too close, just close enough to hear. She learned that Trevor Blaine, the same junior VP who spilled his shake and smirked while she wiped it, was pushing to outsource half the HR department overseas. He bragged about it in the kitchen while making a smoothie with some green powder. "No loyalty in this game," he said to another exec. "Just margin. Anyone who thinks their family here is clueless." They both laughed. That night, Amani emptied the trash in the executive suite and noticed a crumpled-up itinerary in his bin. Flights, hotel rooms, and something labeled entertainment budget for a trip to Miami that wasn't on company books. She didn't take it. She didn't need to. She took a photo and moved on. Then there was Angela Renshaw, head of legal. Perfect teeth, high heels clicking like clockwork, always walking 3 steps ahead of everyone else. She once looked at Amani, squinted like she was trying to remember something, and said, "You look like someone I used to know. What's your name again, LaTanya?" "No, never mind." That night, Amani overheard her saying, "We need to clear the bottom feeders. Start with facilities. Cut 20% and let them figure it out." Bottom feeders. That's what they thought of people like her mother, like her. Amani didn't flinch. She just added Angela's name to the spreadsheet she'd been building for months. It was called Truth Table. Names, habits, policy changes, deals, data, all backed up in 3 separate cloud drives, all encrypted, all dated. She didn't plan on using it recklessly, but she wanted leverage, in case the game turned dirty. It was Tony Samuels, the new CEO, who finally pushed things too far. Tony had been brought in with a golden handshake from a firm in Seattle. Slick hair, designer suits, a voice like a podcast host. He came in talking about disruption, efficiency, and cost realignment. Translation, layoffs. In his first week, he cut 2 janitors and merged 3 support roles into 1. He stopped free lunches for the lower floors and expanded the bar budget for executive meetings. Then came the joke. It happened on a Thursday night. Amani was mopping near the glass wall outside the boardroom. The execs were finishing up a meeting, half tipsy. Imani got off the bus the same way every night, hood up, eyes down, just another face in the blur of late shifts and neon gas station lights. But inside, her mind never stopped moving. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marisol, one of the cafeteria workers. "Heard Tony's flying to Austin next week. Last-minute board thing. You good?" Amani replied with one word, perfect. She had been stacking proxies for almost a year now. Voting shares split into fractions, forgotten by shareholders who didn't show up. She found them, quietly emailed, gained trust. "Just a janitor?" She'd joke in the messages. "Good. That means no one thinks I'm a threat." Some folks ignored her. Others were intrigued. But a handful, they listened, especially the ones who had been pushed out, overlooked, tossed aside by a company that once claimed to be a family. She got a proxy from Dr. Tyrone Bell, a former research lead forced into early retirement. One from Cassandra Liu, a startup founder whose AI firm Everstead acquired and then smothered. Even Dylan Shaw, a former intern who now ran a small investing blog, gave her his micro share just because he said, "You're the only one who seems to care." Bit by bit, Amani became the shadow voice behind nearly 12% of Everstead's shareholder vote. Legally, that was power. Strategically, that was enough. But she wasn't done. One night, after everyone else had cleared out, she sat in the empty executive lounge and typed out a document titled, Motion for Removal of CEO Tony Samuels. Shareholder submission. It was clean, straight to the point, no drama, just data. She included Tony's unauthorized spending, the layoffs, the loss in quarterly morale reports, even the Miami trip, funded through a dummy contractor he claimed was strategic development. Every detail had a receipt. She cross-checked everything twice, then 3 more times. Luis, the security guard, walked by and spotted her at the table. "You know you're not supposed to be in here, right?" he said with a smirk. She didn't look up. "I'm just cleaning," she said. He raised an eyebrow, then noticed the paperwork. "Damn," he muttered. "You really about to do it, huh?" Amani leaned back. Her voice was calm. "No one's going to hand us a seat at that table," she said, "so I'm pulling one up, with or without permission." Luis chuckled. "Let me know if you need backup. I'll wear a tie and everything." She smiled. First time in a while, but the smile didn't last long, because the next day she got a message from Marisol. "They're planning to cut more janitors. Tony's meeting with ops on Monday. Your name came up." They thought they could erase her the same way they erased her mother. Monday morning hit hard. Amani stood by the dumpsters behind the building, phone pressed to her ear, barely hearing the words coming from the other side. "We're sorry, Ms. Rayner, but as part of the restructuring plan, your position is being terminated effective Friday. You'll receive 1 week's severance and a final paycheck." She didn't respond. "Hello, Ms. Rayner?" "I heard you," she said flatly. She hung up. No emotion, no tears. Just confirmation of what she already expected. She leaned against the cinder block wall, staring up at the sky. It was blazing hot. Tempe heat didn't play fair in June, but she didn't feel it. They really did it. They fired her, fired Amani Rayner. She had half a mind to walk into that building and light it up with truth, right then and there. But she took a breath, remembered her mother, remembered why she started this. She still had leverage, still had shares, still had the motion. She texted Luis. "Board meeting this Friday, 6 p.m. Tony will be there. I need to be in that room." Luis replied with a thumbs up. That meant yes. Next, she hit send on 20 emails, to all her proxy supporters, to the 2 board members she had quietly won over, to the assistant of the company's general counsel, who had always replied late, but always replied. Then she picked up her mop and went back to work. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, she cleaned like nothing had changed. No one noticed her pacing, the quick glances at her phone, or the stack of documents she kept in her locker under a roll of trash bags. Friday arrived. The boardroom was already buzzing when she stepped off the freight elevator at 5:55 p.m. She wasn't in her uniform. This time she wore a sharp black blazer, jeans, and sneakers. Her badge still worked. Luis had made sure of that. She walked down the hall slowly, head high. Inside, Tony was mid-joke again. "I'm telling you," he said to the board, "the best move I made was cutting dead weight. Sometimes you gotta stop feeding the bottom to float the top." He didn't see her yet, but one of the board members did, Charles Mendez. Gray hair, quiet, eyes sharp. Tony finally noticed. "Can I help you, miss? This is a private meeting." Amani didn't flinch. "No need," she said. "I'm here as a shareholder, and I'm submitting this." She placed a folder on the table. Inside, motion for removal, proxy support, documentation, all legal, all locked. Silence. Tony looked at her like she'd brought in a prank. "Is this a joke? Who let her in here?" Mendez cleared his throat. "She's within her rights, Tony. Her paperwork's in order." Another board member nodded. "I got her email. I gave her my proxy." Then came the ripple. One by one, hands went up. "I did too. She's got mine. She reached out. I agreed." Tony's smile disappeared. "Wait a minute. This is absurd. She cleans toilets." Amani stepped forward. "I clean what gets dirty," she said. "And right now, that includes this board." But this wasn't about anger. This was about action. About flipping the script in front of the same people who thought she couldn't read it. Tony stood frozen, the red in his face spreading down his neck like he was overheating from inside. "You don't have the authority to pull something like this," he snapped. Amani calmly opened her folder again. "I have 11.6% of the vote. Enough to call for a formal review under Article 7, Section B of the shareholder agreement. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Mendez leaned forward, flipping through the pages. She's not wrong. This is solid. You'd know that if you actually read the bylaws instead of outsourcing everything to your assistant. Tony reached for a glass of water, nearly knocking it over. This is a stunt, he barked. You think you're going to come in here dressed like that and, what, stage a coup? Imani didn't blink. I came dressed for work. You came dressed for excuses. There were small sounds, clearing throats, shuffling papers, but no one laughed this time. One of the newer board members, a woman named Chandra Patel, looked directly at Tony. We've had concerns, Tony. Performance is down. Culture is in free fall. Staff morale has never recovered from the layoffs, and now we're finding out you've been charging personal trips to shell contractors? I've explained that, Tony said quickly, sweating now. Not to the IRS, you haven't, Imani replied, sliding another document across the table. Mendez leaned back, fingers steepled. She didn't come here with guesses. She came here with receipts. Tony turned to Chandra. Are you really taking her word over mine? Chandra looked at him like he'd said something embarrassing. I'm taking the word of the paperwork, and the fact that 5 of us gave her our proxies should tell you we've been watching too. Tony looked around, eyes darting. He knew. I'm not resigning, he said, chest puffing up. I built this company back up. I took us through the worst quarter of 2023. No, said Mendez. You steered it into the worst quarter. Imani's right. You buried the people doing the real work and gave yourself a bonus. Imani stood tall, not smiling, not gloating, just tired. I'm not here to lead a parade, she said. I'm here to remind you who Everstead belongs to. It's not your playground. It's people's livelihoods. It was my mother's life. And you treated her like she was nothing. Tony opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Chandra raised her hand. All in favor of immediate removal of Tony Samuels as CEO, say aye. The next morning, Imani showed up at Everstead's front entrance. Same badge, same face, different energy. She wasn't in a suit. She wasn't carrying a briefcase. She wore the same uniform they fired her in. Because this wasn't about image. It was about finishing what she started. Marisol found her in the cafeteria, eyes wide. Girl, you serious right now? That really happened? Imani nodded, sipping from a foam cup of black coffee. Luis walked by, mock saluting her with 2 fingers. CEO Slayer. Imani smirked. Don't gas me up. Later that week, an email went out company-wide. Not from Imani, but from the board. The subject line read, Change begins with acknowledging the people who build the foundation. In it, they announced a temporary executive committee that included 2 facility staff members, 1 cafeteria lead, and a junior software engineer. Not because it looked good, but because Imani made sure they were heard. Severance policies were reviewed, layoffs halted. The bar budget? Gone. That money went straight into health benefits and training programs. They even renamed the company's community outreach initiative, the Celeste Project. Imani didn't ask for that, but when she saw the logo, her mother's name printed in gold on a navy background, she took a quiet walk to the women's restroom and cried for 5 minutes. Not because she was sad, because it mattered now. 3 weeks later, Mendez asked again if she'd consider an official leadership position. She said no again. Then what do you want? He asked. I want to keep showing up at 9 p.m., she said. At least for now. Keep watching. Keep making sure they don't forget. Seems like a waste of your brain, he replied. Imani shrugged. I don't need a desk to think. Before leaving the room, she turned to him and added, and if anyone else ever calls a janitor dead weight again, you better believe they'll be next. Sometimes the ones everyone overlooks end up being the only ones who care enough to fix what's broken. Sometimes the person you think is mopping floors is actually clearing space for something better. Imani never wanted revenge. She wanted respect. She wanted truth. And more than anything, she wanted to make sure her mother's work meant something. Now it did. Because real power doesn't come from titles or corner offices. It comes from the courage to do what's right when nobody thinks you can. If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or looked down on, remember, your story isn't over. You don't have to shout to be strong. Sometimes the quiet ones change everything. Now go prove them wrong.